Hello and welcome to CharitEpulse, your regular update and happenings in the charity sector and the podcast where purpose meets personality. I'm James Saunders, I'm a partner at Morkington Smith, and I'm joined as ever by my co-hosts Catherine Rastromji, partner and head of charities at Shakespeare Martineau, and Charles Mesquita, charities director at Quilter Cheviot. And we're going to dive into the heart of that charity sector, unpack the big issues, spotlight unsung heroes, and share some stories that matter. You may be listening to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or on any of our respective organisations' websites. However you're listening, you're very welcome, but please don't forget to like and follow and subscribe, and generally try and hit any positive feedback button you can for us. Presumably, of course, you do find our little sessions useful. We've been scouring the charity news for matters which we think will be of interest to all you charities out there. So let's just dive straight in, or perhaps Charles, tee off. First item on the agenda this week is research from Pro Bono Economics into the value that the voluntary sector brings to the UK economy, which they estimate is far higher than the government statistics might suggest. The Pro Bono Economics figure, something around £40 billion, whereas the government statistics suggest a figure of around £19 billion. It seems the big difference really is that the PBE analysis includes an amount estimating the value of volunteering, which they estimate is around £16 billion per year. And an equivalent figure isn't included in the government statistics. Rather confusingly, in a separate piece of research, the government's own statistics on the value of volunteering shows a value of £25 billion, although indeed that was back in 21-22. So there's a little bit of inconsistency there. We're not really comparing apples with, well, let alone apples, any type of fruit really. But Charles, have you got any thoughts on this and quite what it all means to, or what you can take from it at all?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because this was being commissioned by the Gravel Institute, which is an organisation that was effectively founded in Oxford, in New College, as part of New College, looking at various issues. So the words that Pro Bono Economics use in their report is it severely undervalues, and the National Office, or the Office of National Statistics, puts the gross value at about what I mean, the figure's been bandied around at 17 billion, 19 billion, but less than 1% of GDP. And in fact, a figure that Pro Bono Economics have come up in the past is about 200 billion, which is around 10% of GDP, which is quite a significant number. The reason that this is important is that when it comes to government funding the sector and making it, I suppose, having it on the radar, actually having the real value of the contribution towards the economy and to society is a really key element of it. Not being an economist, I have to say I don't quite understand how they come to the figures, but what you can, because they talk about formal volunteering and informal volunteering. And informal volunteering, I mean, the figure is given at 60 billion, where formal volunteering at 24 billion. So these numbers are really big numbers. And the other thing I would just point out is that according to the Charity Commission, we've got 166,000 charities in England and Wales, so obviously excluding Scotland and Northern Ireland. But the annual turnover is about 90 billion a year, which, I mean, you'll remember I've given this figure of twice what we spend on defence and half what we spend on the NHS. So I think the importance of this connects into Labour and the, is it the compact that they've come up with?
Covenant.
The covenant. I knew I'd get it wrong. I should think of witches, shouldn't I, when it comes to
I know.
covenant?
Yeah, absolutely. Catherine, any thoughts?
Yeah, so
I thought the chief executive of Pro Bono Economics, Matt Whitaker, very helpfully knitted it together, as he often does, I think. But he commented that the report's figures show that civil society's economic contribution is routinely underestimated. And I would add to that to say, I don't think it's only underestimated, I think it's underappreciated. And I think the two go hand in hand. But Matt Whitaker goes on to say, if policymakers continue to overlook civil society's economic footprint, they risk undermining a sector that supports jobs, skills, health, and resilience across the country. So I think that's what this is about. I think the figures can be quite mind-blowing, and you think what to make of it, how have they been calculated? But ultimately, I think it's acknowledging the importance of civil society to our overall society and how government should be supporting and encouraging that, whether financially or otherwise.
There's also a strange statistic in there as well. £38.5 billion loss due to volunteering decline. So they estimate that there's actually been a decline in the value of volunteering based on the amount of volunteering for the last 5 or 6 years, which doesn't quite ring true, does it, Charles?
I think this may be something to do with COVID and the ramifications of that. I think we're still trying to, it's a bit like people, whether working from home or working in the office, I think there's still an adjustment going on. Again, I don't know how they have come to those figures, but I think there has definitely been a fall off, and particularly potentially of people who are retired.
Okay. Good. Thank you for that. Second topic is this unfortunate case of a theft, a fraud from the charity, the Prison Reform Trust. Previously convicted former employees been jailed after stealing hundreds of thousands of pounds. And the unfortunate and equally interesting bit about this is that the lady in question had been convicted of fraud on a previous occasion, and yet was employed by the Reform charity, the Prison Reform Trust, in a financial role, and was allowed then, unfortunately, or had the capacity to steal a huge amount of money from them as well. It's never nice to read this sort of stuff, but it does raise questions about decision making, quite how second chances. It's all great, but are we sure that second chances in a role where you've had a previous prison conviction is sensible? Catherine, I'll come to you first. What do you think?
Yeah, this one, I mean, they are desperately sad. I think we're seeing more reporting of, fraud against charities, but this one really made me cringe. And I have had a number of clients mention it to me in passing, that it really just looks so naive. It's such an own goal. Somebody who has a conviction for fraud in the past is then recruited as head of finance, seemingly without sufficient safeguards in place. And she was employed between 2016 and 2023. So I was thinking, gosh, she's had a fair few annual appraisals there for somebody who was carrying out a fraudulent transaction every other week to get to a fraud of £300,000. Where I did have sympathy for the charity was that the police didn't pursue this, and it's not explained why that is the case. But I think that is shocking that there is clear evidence of fraud. It's quantifiable, it's clear who did it, and I don't know the reasons why the police are not, in my book, doing their job. It's a criminal action, they should be pursuing it, and it shouldn't have to be a charity that then has to pursue a case to have any sort of restitution from this. So that I thought was particularly disappointing. But I thought the charity did ultimately respond to it well by saying, yeah, we made a mistake, not in giving her a second chance, but that they didn't have sufficient safeguards in place and they would do better.
Yeah, I mean, I think, giving people a second chance is always very commendable and always the right thing to do. But I can't help feeling giving them a second chance to do exactly something very similar to what they've been convicted of in the past is a bit daft. Charles, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Catherine. The bit that really jumped out to me was that the police didn't pursue it. I mean, this is £300,000 that have been stolen from a charity, so it's not an inconsequential sum, and there were 170 fraudulent transactions. The bit about giving somebody a second chance, I think definitely people should be given a second chance. I think that they were right on that bit. This to me is just about having controls in place to make sure that you can pick up on these things and they don't happen like that, and that to me, and to be fair, the charity did acknowledge that was the case. And if the lessons that I would take away as a trustee is making sure you've got the correct processes and procedures in place and making sure they're being followed.
Yes, good. Thank you. We're moving on. The Charity Commission has concluded on a matter that we have touched on before at various times, not least because it's very newsworthy. The case of the Sentebale dispute. Before we get into the detail of it, it's amazingly quick for the Commission to have resolved this one, isn't it, Catherine? Really? I mean, it's
Amazingly. And I do
very
wonder
short
about,
weeks.
yeah, about the delays I'm facing, because I've had clients say to me, have we all been pushed back in the queue because things like this leapfrog? And I think, yeah, they have.
Yeah, I can well believe it. Their conclusion, I mean, they've concluded that the trustees fell out and they should have not fallen out, and very little besides that, haven't they? Really? I mean, they've decided they're not going to, or they haven't found any. They say they haven't found weakness. They haven't found evidence of the accusations that were made playing out, so it's all very bland on that front. And after that, the lesson seems to be, well, the trustees should have sorted this out in a nicer way than they have. Is that a decent summary, Charles?
No, I think there's more to that. I think the comments, yeah. So the bit that leapt off the page to me, one, the Commission's role as a regulator is not to adjudicate or mediate internal pursuits in charities. Which I think, again, it's very easy to get to a situation of where you have got a dispute and then you look to the regulator to resolve that. So I think they're sending a very clear message on that.
But on that, just stopping on that, just very quickly, who is, if the trustees can't decide, where do they go?
Well, I think
there is a mediation association called CEDR. CEDR, which does resolve charity disputes. I mean, there are mediation bodies that you could go to, but I think the Charity Commission maintain this standard line because, and I did agree with your summary, James, because I think this is a bit kind of your mum turning around to you and saying, you're both as bad as each other, grow up. Because, this dispute has played out in public and it shouldn't have. And I don't think either side was necessarily squeaky clean in the way that they have communicated it. So that was one of the bits I would focus on.
I think we should bear this in mind for a matter that we will turn to in a minute, in the next that we'll turn to in a minute. But Charles, go on for this one.
So the other thing is the regulators criticised all parties for the dispute for allowing it to play out publicly. And to my mind, the biggest losers in all of this are their beneficiaries. And this to me is the bit that I kept coming back from is, you become a trustee because you want to you want to make a difference and you feel passionate about the purpose of the organization and those that you're helping. And this is clearly, for whatever reasons, and I have no inside knowledge of what went on. I mean, I am still slightly amazed that the chair of trustees, as far as I'm aware, still has not resigned. And listen, let's not forget, according to the press, she came in July 2023 as a trustee and chair. So I think, to my mind, lesson here to any other organization, appointing a trustee and chair that becomes immediate chair, I think is really asking for trouble. I think you need somebody to make sure that they're working within the board, because as we've discussed before, a chair is not a special position. It is just one amongst equals. And the second thing is that she threatened legal action against them. There's a court case. I don't know what's happened to that court case, of which the Commission has come out that it could find no evidence about it. So I assume that court case is being dropped. But I can also, if I was a trustee and somebody was threatening legal case, I would very quickly resign, because I don't, I'm a volunteer. I'm not want to put up money to defend myself, irrespective of what I feel. So I just find the whole thing is just very sad.
I mean, I think to most outsiders, the spend, particularly on the strategic advisory stuff, was just, crazy. To however much, hundreds of thousands of pounds on reworking the strategy, that's beneficiaries' money that they're not going to get. And following all of this, if the reporting on this is to be believe the current reporting, funding for this charity is completely stopped. There's nothing coming in for them at all. They've extended their year end on the Companies House, and I'm sure it'll be very interesting to see exactly what their financial position is once some accounts are provided, because by various accounts coming out, there's no money gone into this at all. Indeed, partly it seems, unfortunately, because an awful lot of the money was generated by Prince Harry and his network, and if that goes, but as you were alluding to, I think, Charles, where's the benefit to the beneficiaries here of all that spend in the first place and no money coming in now? The reporting again is that all the activity camps and all this sort of stuff finished. There's nothing going on for this charity at all. So in the end, as you said, Charles, the beneficiaries have completely suffered in this. And if that's the responsibility, if that's the actions of a responsible trustee board and chair, I can't see that at all.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about this before. I think damage to reputation is very hard to come back from. And for something like this, I think the reputation for this charity is ruined. I wouldn't want to support it financially or otherwise. And I think, the real losers are the beneficiaries, but there doesn't seem to be any moment of insight of the current trustees to say, actually, we need to get back on track and do something about it.
There's no remorse either,
No.
is there, at all,
No.
of all this money that has been spent and is not there anymore? I mean, which is the very hard-nosed element of this. As you said, Charles, it is I think it's very sad that there's absolutely no mea culpa here at all. And if anything, it's even more legalities going on, it seems. I mentioned we compared it to something else. The case of Freewheel North, which is a different matter, and seems to have taken an awful lot longer this is the Scottish regulator, Oscar, has decided that it opened an inquiry into the charity on 15th of July 2022. So that's 3 years to come to a conclusion on this. Charity Commission conclusion on Sentebale, what, 4 or 5 weeks? Anyway, just saying. The Office of the Scottish Regulator has ordered a charity to elect a new board of trustees after the relations between 3 of the existing trustees had a severe breakdown. So and when we said earlier, the Charity Commission has no responsibility to get involved in disputes between charities, or I might be paraphrasing there a bit excessively, but then there's the Oscar has told a board to elect a new board. So is it not one rule for some and one rule for another? Catherine,
and I do wonder though, because on this, then as the typical lawyer that I am, I would point to it and say, well, constitutionally, therefore, there must have been or continue to be a flaw in the process that they followed, and whether they haven't followed their own governing document, whether they haven't followed due process, that applies to them, because Oscar has been able to point to that and say, no, there is a deficiency here, it is not compliant, therefore the only way that you can get on solid ground is to run it again, because you can't rely on the results that you had last time. What was interesting then, I think, was it the founder that then commented on it? So again, as a jaded charity lawyer, I'd think, oh, founder syndrome, often fatal, can't see beyond their own opinion of it, rather than that's not necessarily what's actually happening. But it was an interesting contrast, wasn't it, with what Oscar says compared to the Charity Commission. But also this doesn't have Prince Harry, so far fewer articles
but
about
it does have a founder and and a board that is in dispute. So there's a lot of similarities, and I wonder whether it really, if you were to take them in isolation and take out certain elements that make the one more newsworthy than the other, that there might not be a little bit of different treatment here. What do you think, Charles?
But I mean, and I don't know whether the founder is also a trustee, but so 2 things. I mean, one, the regulator said something, and to be honest with you, why are you challenging that in public, even if you don't agree with what the regulators found? And the second thing, actually, how much damage is this doing to the organization? I mean, to my mind, I'd look at this and say, okay, fine. How do we get this resolved? The regulator wants us to have another AGM in October and make sure that people are done. Let's just get on with it and do it. Why are we arguing the difference between what you thought happened in May, but the regulator doesn't feel it was done appropriately, and actually just getting on and doing it? I do wonder whether people allow their egos to overtake the real purpose, what they should be really focusing on, which is making sure that the purpose of the organization is being fulfilled.
Okay, so going on another step from this and reports to the Charity Commission and its role. There's another case, is one of several, I think, that have been going on recently, where employees have complained to the Charity Commission about their charities' activities, board appointments. The one I'm looking at the moment is Toynbee Hall. Some staff members have raised concerns with the Charity Commission about the appointment of an interim chief executive. Now, in this case, the Charity Commission, I understand the most recent comment from the Charity Commission is we are assessing whether we should be intervening in this. Should they, Catherine?
No. And things happen that people don't like. And sometimes that's just life. Tough. Get on with it. I think with charities, the Charity Commission end up being anybody feels they can complain about any charity they want for doing anything at all, and the Charity Commission will have to look into it. And so in this case, I do have some sympathy for the Charity Commission in that response to say, actually, okay, fine, we will look into it. But I'd be very surprised if this wasn't the case, but I would expect the answer to be, this is nothing to do with us as the regulator of charities, and it's a decision for the trustees. And again, it also applies to staff, doesn't it? Why are you speaking out against the charity that you work for and that is your employer? And really, what do you think the outcome from this is going to be? And for the person, I think, to be publicly criticised in this way is really damaging to their reputation. I haven't seen any evidence they've actually done anything wrong. The whole thing did not sit well when I was reading this.
Charles?
I suppose the things that were going through my mind, is this a generational thing about, if you find something within an organization that you feel deeply unhappy about, you've then got to share publicly. I just, through my whole working life, and there've been a couple of occasions where I've worked for organizations which, I'm not necessarily like some of the things that are being done, but if I don't like it, then I vote with my feet and I move somewhere else. And because, you have a long career and your reputation is built around it. And if you're out there vocally being vocal about an organization, your employability going forward, I would have thought would diminish. So I'm sort of really surprised. And also, if these people really care about the organizations they're involved in, do they really want to be doing this in public? I just, again, it goes back to the conversation we've had with Sentebale and that we've had about the Glasgow cycling charity. The damage reputationally, do you want to give money to these organizations that if you've got internal disputes and you're not sure what's going on because you never have the facts? I sit there just sort of slightly bemused by the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think the most overused phrase I think at the moment, and unfortunately it's demeaning the phrase, and it's because it's overused, that toxic culture or toxic workplace stuff, which can basically just be used for something, as you said, Charles, something that someone doesn't like, and suddenly it moves from a slight disagreement into the whole thing is so difficult, so bad that it shouldn't be allowed to go on. And the trouble with whistleblowing in many ways is there's no comeback on the whistleblower if it turns out it's all a bit of a storm in a teacup and a bit over the top. Genuine whistleblowing over, I mean, I work and I'm a trustee in the school sector. Whistleblowing over genuine safeguarding issues with children is really serious and should be taken as such. Whistleblowing because you didn't like a decision that your line manager gave to you in a charity. I mean, it's not like for like, is it, Catherine?
Agreed. And I just think it's exactly this. I think the way it all plays out, the way people think I can say anything I want, this is a good thing to do. I would just question the whole, what were you thinking and what did you think the outcome would be from this? And how is that benefiting your charity, whether you're a trustee or an employee?
But I haven't, the one bit I haven't checked is how much of this is being played out in social media, because I do, the press has legal obligations about what they can do and what they can't do, and the validity of what they're printing. Where in social media, of course, you don't have those same restrictions. And I do sometimes think that people just literally, first thing comes into their head, I'm going to be a little bit thing, is just verbalize it straight onto a big page and have a rant without it being considered. And maybe this is a product of the time we're in, and we're going to have to work out how we deal with it.
Okay, I think we probably have to close off there. Probably all we've got time for. We've covered an awful lot there. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Charles. And thank you to you, the listener, for tuning in to this latest episode of Charity Pulse. Hope today's conversation offered some insight and some inspiration, and maybe a bit of understanding some aspects of this most important world of charity and social impact. If you've got any questions or topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes, please do let us know. Whether you're a charity professional, a passionate volunteer, or simply someone who cares about making a difference, we do aim to make sure there's something here for all of you. Don't forget, please follow us, leave a review, share our podcast with your network, and join us next time as we continue to explore those challenges and the opportunities facing charities, non-profits, voluntary organisations.